Welcome, friends! Tales of Eldelórne is produced in 16-bit CD quality for your listening pleasure. My name is Karleigh, and I'm here to lead you down the path of this dark fantasy alpha novella. On with the show already, right? Tales of Eldelórne, Book 1. In our last episode, Thendiel and the king had parted ways. Thendiel went home to Eldelórne and her son Rovach. King Elendil bestowed upon Thendiel a very special ring which he had in his possession since the beginning of his lifetime. The ring represented her favor with the king. It was meant to be a symbol of protection and give her a raised status among the other elves. Or at least you would think so. Chapter 3: Dark Moon and Sun. Rovach had been dutifully keeping their home, patiently waiting for his mother's return. Tinctures and medicinal tea mixes were stacked on shelves, ready for delivery to the Eldelórne central store. Ro had indeed kept himself busy and out of trouble. He was shocked at the sight of his mother. They flew into a warm embrace. With her cheek pressed on the top of his head, she hugged him as if she would never let him go. Strands of her hair tickled his face, and he genuinely smiled for the first time since she had left. "I am so glad to find you well. You have grown even taller," she said, relieved to finally be home. "It is so different outside our cozy place," she smiled wistfully. "What has happened to you, Mother?" Ro was very concerned. "I entered the realm of the lords to save our king. It proved more difficult and complicated than I thought it would be." "You are so pale. Does it hurt?" Ro reached out and touched the side of her face with his hand. Thendiel smiled at him reassuringly. "No, I feel the same as before." It was a half-truth. Thendiel could not yet put into words how she felt about everything that had happened. "The realm of the lords is so full of commotion." She stopped, not knowing how to explain it, so she changed the subject. "Our family will be growing larger," she happily announced. Ro's eyes grew huge with wonder. "King Elendil has seen a vision of my future and tells me I'm going to have another son, so you will soon have your very own brother." She told him in a simplified way so he could understand. She watched his face, hoping he would be happy with the news. Rovach was not sure what having a brother would be like, so he just quietly smiled at her. That evening, when Ro was ready for a good night's sleep, Thendiel brought out the king's gift and gave it to him. Rovach's eyes shone star-like as he peered into the blue glow of the tiny vial. Thendiel was reminded of her husband Marin's eyes on that first day they met. She softly smiled at his memory. "Thank you, Mother." Ro held up the tiny light. He found that he could use his will to turn the brightness down and even off with the touch of his hand. "The king tells me they use these on-board ships so they could find each other in the fog. He says you will never be lost to his protective sight if you keep this with you." She poked him on the nose as she said it. "Like a charm for luck?" he asked. "Yes, for luck, and maybe for not stubbing your toes in the darkness," she teased, reaching over to tickle him. Thendiel watched her son's smiling eyes and now understood the thing that so compelled her to return. It was moments of privacy like this with her family that she treasured most in her heart. Her happiness brought thoughts of her unborn to mind. She was still not sure how it had happened. Elendil assured her the son was of Ilmatar, but her experience in the violent realm of the lords was like a dream in the waking mind, and she could not see how it was possible. At the shock of her own parents' disappearance, she had vowed long ago never to put her son through that, but this had almost taken her life away. She shuddered at the thought of it. "And there will be 2 sons," she sighed tiredly. She carefully removed the glowing finial from Ro's sleeping hand and hung his star on a small hooked branch above him in the window's edge. Frowning at painful memories that threatened to flood her mind, she gently kissed her sleeping Rovash on his brow. After one last look at his face in the dimmed glow of the starlight, she headed back downstairs. The quickening was completely different from Thendiel's other birthing experience. Her belly didn't bulge or feel heavy as it did with her firstborn. She could even say she felt lighter as the days drew near. Eijlam was born silently in the usual elven way. He was almost as small as the palm of his mother's hand, and glowed with the beauty of pure-blooded elvenkin. Rovash looked on in fascination at this new life that lay between them on his mother's pillow. He liked the way Eijlam tightly gripped the tip of his finger with his tiny hands. "It is unbelievable that I could ever have been this small." He rubbed Eijlam's tiny head with his finger, and the little one looked at him and cooed. Ro smiled and giggled at his little brother, who seemed to wrinkle up his tiny pink face and laugh back at him. Thendiel was not surprised by Rovash's tenderness. Of course he would be. She needn't have worried. His father was always so kind and gentle. She thought of him as she gazed lovingly at her family. It may be later that their relationship might prove more difficult, she reminded herself. Thendiel thought about the way kinship was between other brothers she knew. Some grew to oppose one another, never to agree on anything. Others were too competitive and caused injury. She prayed it would not be as such. She wanted her sons to grow to be friends. "Remember, in life all we have are each other when all others fail," she told her sleepy Rovash as she stroked a loose hair off his face. Thendiel and her eldest son slept with the tiny newborn elfling between them in a protective nest made up of their curled-in bodies. Since Thendiel had been honored for saving their king, the females of her village were more tolerant of her. They didn't even seem to mind the sight of her half-blood son as he followed his mother to the market. The Elderhiss excitedly gathered around to see the tiny newborn as Thendiel carried him sleeping in her deliveries basket. Ro felt protective of his little brother, so when they pressed in too close, he would glare at them with his most convincing warning face. The elders teased him gently this time, calling him the Royal Guard. Rovash just scowled, not understanding the joke. Speculations were whispered behind Thendiel's back as to whom the sire of the little one might be. Many believed he was King Elendil's son. When they saw his light hair, they were sure of it. Eijlam's hair grew a shimmering pale gold, and his large eyes were oddly 2 different colors. The right one was a light pale blue, like Ro's eye, and the other was a golden brown like his mother's. Though so tiny and fragile at birth, Eijlam quickly grew strong and wiry, as do all young elves. Ro liked to carry his little brother, clinging to his shoulders as they went out among the villagers. Eijlam was always smiling widely, in contrast to his big brother's serious demeanor. The villagers seemed more cordial and helpful than they had been in the past. The 2 did things all young ones do. They climbed trees, ran and played tag on the sand. They built forts and caught things to bring home to eat. Sometimes they even caught a rabbit or found some bird eggs for their mother's pantry. Thendiel noticed how her eldest was bolder about going out in the village. She was delighted to see it. Rovash had spent way too much time cooped up in their house, angry and unable to go out, for fear he would have to face another conflict on his own. "You have stolen my eye, and I'm coming to get it," Ro howled as EJ ran screeching past and out the doorway. Ro kissed his mother's cheek and happily grabbed 2 apples off the table as he quickly clambered away. The 2 were inseparable and always noisy. Other youths just seemed to stay out of their way. Maybe it was that Ro was busy chasing after the little blonde streak of a brother that he didn't feel like he was missing anything anymore. Thendiel kissed her young sons good night and held them tightly, curled up to sleep. A silent tear escaped her eye as she looked up into the pale, twinkling stars outside her window. She felt these precious days were somehow numbered. After the birth of Eijlam, she could feel the subtle tones of the lords in the air. It was like a serpent that crawled around the darker edges of her awareness. At first the feeling was like mild anxiety, quickly passed off because of new motherhood, but then she recognized its true meaning. She was always raised to believe in the benevolent lords of the undying lands of Ilmatar. Something that was meant to bring comfort to Elvenkin instead raised her ire. Am I to be quickened away from my young ones before they can even fend for themselves? She wondered. As time passed, Thendiel felt herself fading. In the natural order of things, her life should have only been beginning, but she felt aged. She tried many times to have this conversation with her young ones. It was hard to talk about something that you couldn't quite find the words for. And subjecting her sons to worry was the last thing she wanted to do. It was a growing chasm of darkness between them, with the persistent serpent always creeping in when she was alone. Regardless of Thendiel's worries, it was a good time for her small clan in the routine life of Eldelórne. Rovash and Eijlam grew sturdy and strong, and soon were enrolled in their Eldar's education center. There they would learn many things concerning elven and human cultures. The reciting of long memory, text writing, art and music, archery and athletics were all part of daily classes. The young elves were separated into similar age groups, which divided the students into elflings, youth, and adolescents. Ro found that the sway against his human blood came back to haunt him. Eijlam was confused as his brother grew sullen. He tried to encourage Rovash to be more positive, but a past life of isolation shrouded his heart in sadness and disappointment. He watched as his little brother seemed to fit in where he could not. Because many believed Eijlam was the king's offspring, curiosity made classmates behave differently at first. But he was also Thendiel's son, and sadly, he was introduced to the ways of untruth and false friendship. Eijlam, stop! Ro grabbed him by the tunic and tore him off the fallen youth. He dragged EJ back from the insults the others yelled as they cowered away from Ro. They are not worthy. These elflings' narrow minds will not change because you bloody a nose. Ro never appreciated his little brother getting caught up in fighting, no matter what the cause. But they started it, Eijlam protested as Ro carried him away under his arm like a flailing sack of potatoes. They always start it. Can you not get that through your thick head? You have to stop listening to vile words. Our mother would be not happy to hear of this, EJ. Ro growled, knowing his brother was stubbornly not listening. Let me down, he hit at Ro's firm grip. Fine, Ro slammed his brother on the ground so hard the air left his lungs. Stunned into silence, EJ lay in a heap in the dirt, gasping for breath. That will shut it, Ro scowled as he stormed away. But I was just trying to stand up for you, big brother. Eijlam pulled a bruised knee up to his face and cried out in the pain of it. He did not understand the depths of his sibling's dark side or why he seemed to turn his anger towards him. He felt like Ro wanted to make him feel sad on purpose. He shook his head, disbelieving his own thoughts. That cannot be truth. I will not believe that of my own brother. EJ frowned through wet tears. Thendiel understands that something is happening to her, and she's not very happy with it. Rovash and Eijlam don't seem to be getting along either. They were enrolled in the learning centers, and it seems they're learning more than just basic education. Thank you for listening. You can join me in more adventures if you press the follow button. I will personally send you a new episode every Thursday so you can hear the rest of the story. Elvish Lesson of the Day. You've heard them greet each other on the LOTR movies where they say, Megavanen. Well, that's their way of saying well met. We will be saying it, Me de ovenen. Me de ovenen. Which also means well met, but it's a less formal way of saying it. So you could be standing there in your jeans and t-shirt, and that would be just fine. And if you're standing in a group, they would say, Me de evenen. Me de evenen. And that means you're still standing there in your blue jeans and t-shirt, and your jackets match. Yeah, well met anyway, guys. Good night.